Hi class. This video is going to start our unit, our first unit, which centers around 9/11. And this unit will talk about a lot of themes. What it means to have freedom, to have security, to have justice. What are iconic moments? How do these moments affect our lives politically, socially, and culturally, and in many other ways? So in order to start this unit, our very first video is going to back up a little bit, and we're going to discuss some events that happened prior to 9/11. Some of that we'll mention in class. But this first video is going to focus on the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, which happened not real long before you were born, but definitely a few years before you were born. I'm sure you've heard of it. You probably don't know much about it, but you probably know that it was the attack on the World Trade Center before the 9/11 attacks. You may have heard how their names were added to the 9/11 memorial and things like that, those who lost their lives on the first attack. So let's start at the beginning. This unfortunate event happened on February 26th of 1993. And after it happened, the World Trade Center was closed and did not reopen that year until March 29th. Think about things that were going on at this time. Our president was Bill Clinton. If you were listening to the radio, Dream Lover by Mariah Carey was probably playing. You see here some of the newspapers of that day. 6 people were killed on that day. 7, if you include that Monica Rodriguez-Smith was pregnant at the time. The other names include John DiGiovanni, Robert Kirkpatrick, Stephen A. Knapp, William Macco, Wilfredo Mercado, and they're people that didn't live really far away from where you guys live. This is the picture of Monica Rodriguez-Smith, who was 35 years old. This was sort of a famous wedding day photo that was shared after the attack. When this attack happened, over 1,000 people were injured, in addition to the 6 that lost their lives. There's a lot of stories about the different injuries. There was a woman who was in a wheelchair who was carried by 2 friends for 66 stories to safety. There's stories of a kindergarten class that spent hours trapped inside. Stories of people who were medically injured and had to go to the roof or helicopters medevac them. There's stories of people being trapped in elevators or in rooms and having to get out by using their keys to cut through the sheetrock to crawl through. Initially, 6 of the suspects were arrested, and then the 7th remained at large. This didn't happen right away. It took some time. Some were not far away in New Jersey. Others were further away, like in countries like Egypt. A little bit about the explosion itself. The explosion was a result of a 1,200-pound bomb that was homemade. It was made in transported from New Jersey. It was put initially in like a van and then moved into a Ryder truck. They're those rental trucks you may see on the roads now and then. The explosion left a hole. You can see some of it here. It was about 200 by 100 feet long. It was several stories deep. It also collapsed part of the PATH train service area that was near there as well. 50,000 people had to be had to be evacuated that day from the World Trade Centers from this. Oops, went the wrong way. Besides the physical damage to the people, it also physically created about $500 million in damage from the infrastructure. I should have mentioned that the bomb in the truck went off in the parking garage at the bottom. So it affected not just the structure, but a lot of things related to like the electricity and all that. Plus, like I said, the PATH train in that area. I want to jump here to Ramzi Youssef. He was sort of one of the masterminds behind it. He said this was done to avenge America for the pain it caused the Palestinians by aiding Israel. And you can see that in this quote here. He, let's see, he was tried. Four of the suspects were put on trial on October 4th of 1993, that soon. He was not convicted until January 8th of 1998, several years later, and he was sentenced to 240 years for all of this awful results. So he's still in prison. One of the people have since died in prison. That's Omar Abdel Rahman. He died not real long ago, February 17th of 2017. So part of the reason we're doing this video first is because as we go on through the rest of the unit, a lot of things will weave together and will unfold just what all these connections are. So of course we have interdisciplinary connections. We think of the engineering, the medical response, and all sorts of things. But also the connections to what it's going to have in our unit later on. Its connections to terror. This in itself, some of the people involved were also involved in the embassy bombings, which happened in Kenya and Tanzania. You may not know about them yet, but you'll find out about them later. Also, Youssef also had ties to bin Laden. We obviously know that bin Laden was tied to 9/11. Also, how it started making Americans, especially those from New York, respond to terror differently. The World Trade Center itself was changed to respond to these terror events. Maybe it saved some people and helped them get out of the World Trade Center earlier for 9/11. Maybe. Because some of those changes were battery-operated emergency lights were put in the World Trade Center. They put luminescent paint on the stairwells so that if even if it was dark, people would have some able ways to see as they descended down the World Trade Center. Emergency command centers were put in every so often, every so many floors on the World Trade Center. People were still okay getting on airplanes and stuff, but people started to become more diligent and more aware of their surroundings. And the way people live now, which is not what people lived, before 9/11, this is where you start to see that change. So those are just some of the connections we're going to make. We're going to talk about many more. You'll probably observe, come up with some connections that I aren't not even aware of right now, and that's the beauty of what we do here. There's so much more you can learn about this, of course, but I try to keep these videos brief. If you have questions, feel free to jot it in the Google form or save it and ask me in class. And I look forward to discussing this with you guys. All right, see you very shortly. Oops, I don't want to leave it this.